Awesome, awesome. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Hassan. First of all, good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. So this is our sixth session for Marketing Cloud training series. Previously, we have done five sessions, and today it is going to be API integrations in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Myself, I'm Asadullah Sheikh. I'm working as a principal engineer at HTTP company. So my experience in Marketing Cloud started in early 2020s, and over the years I have implemented Marketing Cloud for big giants, mainly in Australia, Canada, and United States. So the agenda for today's session is going to be about APIs. So we'll be uh, very briefly discussing about what APIs are and what are the integration patterns before we jump directly into the Salesforce Marketing Cloud APIs and its types. I just want all of you to have a brief overview of what APIs are and why do we need APIs, right? So a short recap of what we have learned so far. So this is our sixth session. In our previous five sessions, we have started with a very basic with what Salesforce Marketing Cloud engagement is, what are its core features, and then we have also done some technical sessions, starting with Marketing Cloud, AMP script, dynamic emails, web pages, and server-side JavaScript. So if you haven't been a part of our previous sessions, the recorded sessions are available on YouTube. You can watch the previous sessions there. So starting with APIs, so API stands for Application Programming Interface. So in a very simpler terms, if I may explain, so API is basically a communication medium between two systems, and the systems can literally be anything. But just to understand what an API is, so think of it as a bridge which transfers information from one side to another. And there is a very popular analogy to understand the API that you probably might have heard about. So that is a waiter analogy. So in this example, let's say we have a customer sitting at a restaurant, and he wants to order some food. So he will probably get in touch with the waiter there, or the waiter will come to the customer by themselves and ask for their order, right? So they, let's say, they just want to order a pizza and a burger and a cold drink. So they will inform the waiter what they need, and the waiter will communicate that with their restaurant kitchen, and they will prepare the food, and the waiter will bring the meal back to the customer on their table. So this is a very typical example that most of that is widely accepted and used to explain API in a very layman terms. So in this example, there are two systems, right? One is customer and the other is the restaurant kitchen itself. And waiter acts as a bridge to communicate between the kitchen as well as the customer. So what he does is gets the order from the customer, informs the kitchen at the restaurant when the order is ready, brings the order back to the customer's table. So that is how APIs work in technical world as well. So you are over working on the internet, and then you want to communicate with some server, a remote server that is not near to you, and you need some communication medium, and that communication medium is API, right? So if I explain this in a technical terminology now, what an API is, so application programming interface, it is nothing but a set of rules and protocols that allow different software applications to exchange data and share functionality. So when in our previous analogy, what we saw is there was a waiter. He communicated the order of the customer to the kitchen and brought back the items that they ordered to the customer. So in the similar scenario in over the internet, you would use API to communicate data and share functionality. So now, if I explain the terminology, application programming interface. So why this is, certainly it is going to be an application that you will be using, and then there will be some interface that you will be interacting with, right? And then it involves some programming to achieve this communication in technical world. So an interface is what it is basically. Think of it as an contract. or a paper. If I explain in simple terminology, think of it as a contract or a paper that you sign with someone to share the communication. So for example, when two people meet with each other, what they first do is they probably will handshake or greet each other to start the communication, right? So that starting point is in internet world is going to be the interface, and that is where the communication begins between two systems. And then there is some program behind the scenes which will be executed to share or convey the information from one part to the other. And when you are carrying information from one side to the other, it involves some set of rules and certain protocols, because the security is a very common factor that everyone needs to think before sharing data with any party. So that is why an application programming interface has some certain rules, and it follows certain protocols before you can communicate. For example, when you are meeting with someone in person, you can simply talk directly. But when you want to communicate with someone who is not in front of you, you would probably use a mobile, your cell phone or mobile, or maybe some other channel. So, to communicate through mobile, you need a SIM card. To communicate through internet, you need a Wi-Fi connection. So there are going to be some certain rules. What kind of uh, communication can you carry on over the network? For example, you can do voice calls, you can do messages, you can do video calls. So for all of these different type of communications, you will probably be having different communication mediums or channels, and every channel will have its different methods for communication. So that is what API does in the internet world. So now when we look at the full picture, so in the previous example, so the customer is going to be a client, and that is a terminology we use in the technical aspect. So there is always going to be a client, and API will be the middleware, which basically facilitates the communication or the exchange of data. And there will always be some server from where you will get your data. Certainly, when you are working over the internet, we are talking about the data. So when you are using a browser, you act as a client. And then, for example, you go to the google.com. That is a website, so there is certainly a server somewhere, and there are APIs which basically bring the information on your computer's screen. So that is how a typical scenario works. And you see there is a complete cycle. A user starts some communication, the server receives some information and responds back something, some information, or maybe a functionality. When this whole cycle completes, this is called integration. So this is a complete integration cycle. And that is why the terminology API integration. So all of the systems are now connected with each other, right? So moving forward, when we talk about API integration, so there are certain patterns or strategies to integrate multiple systems together. Before I move forward, in this example, we have a customer sitting at a restaurant, and waiter acts as a medium to communicate or receive the order from the customer, and the restaurant prepares the order. But what happens if you are not at the restaurant? How will you communicate with the waiter? So that is a challenge, right? In this scenario, you will probably need a different kind of communication medium to order your food. And that is why we have different strategies or communication mediums available over the internet also, to facilitate the communication of different types of different data, and also to extend the functionality between two systems, right? So before we talk about the how these integrations will be implemented in it programmatically, we first design the integrations, right? So what are the integrations going to be? what will be the strategy to connect two systems, and that particularly depends upon your scenario. So every business has different scenarios, and to facilitate those scenarios, there are different integration patterns that you can use. So we are going to discuss three common API integration patterns today. There are certainly more, but these are something that you would have seen previously, and now we will be talking about that. So the first one and the most common one is always going to be request and response. So just the example that we saw earlier, there is always going to be a client, and a client initiates a request and waits for its processing. The server receives the information, and then according to the request, the server initiates a response back to the client. So that is a two-way communication, right? So the client makes a request, server receives a request, and then sends the response back, and it involves some wait time in this process. So, for example, a common example that I can share with you for this is a WhatsApp message. When you send a message to someone on WhatsApp, you get blue tick marks. So, just to inform you that the message has been delivered or received or read by the end user. So, that is an example of request and response. And then the other one is going to be fire and forget. So, most of the times, what happens is you are not interested in receiving any response from the server. You just initiate a process and go with the flow. You do not need something from them. So in that scenario, the integration pattern is called fire and forget, where why fire and forget, it is very this terminology comes from uh, what we call is uh, I, I cannot remember that word, but on events or occasions you use, what is it called? I'll let you know what it is called.
You're talking about trigger?
Sorry.
You're talking about trigger?
No.
Right.
So I'll let you know what it is. The firecrackers, basically. So you light something and it explodes in the air. So that is why it's fire and forget. So the client sends some information to the server, and we do not wait for the response from the server. So that is an integration pattern called fire and forget that you would have mostly seen. For example, you are sending an email, and then you don't know whether the email is sent or not, but you just send an email and you forget about it unless you receive the information from the other side, and there is no certain methodology to identify whether the email was sent or when it was delivered, right? So that is fire and forget. And then the other one is batch synchronization, which is a typical process that you mostly would have seen. It is also an integration pattern, but what happens is you send the information in different batches. So for example, you have a large data. You cannot send a large data at one time in a single go to the server. For that, you will have to split the information into different batches or sizes or files. So for that, you will be utilizing a batch synchronization. And also, when you have a system which operates in real time. So for example, there is a lead coming in to the system, and that is transferred to the server. Sometimes what you do is you hold the leads in the cache of your server, and then send that data to the database. So that is an example of batch synchronization, and we will see an example of batch synchronization as well as request and response in our today's demo. Okay, so now moving forward, the
I said
type of
Jefferson mentioned that was it named as asynchronous, or you're talking about the fire and forget term
yeah, the fire and forget are basically firecrackers. So where this terminology come from? Firecrackers. So what they
yeah,
the what would be? So what happens is you light a let's say firecracker, and it explodes up in the
yeah,
air.
absolutely. Launch and leave, right?
Yeah. So the firecracker is the word that I was trying to remember.
Right, right.
In the Salesforce Or we call it as well something very similar like platform event and CDC. I don't know if we have this in Marketing Cloud.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is correct. But the terminology when you would use synchronous or asynchronous is actually a different. Asynchronous is kind of an integration pattern as well. So this is just for the beginners where they might not have heard about integration patterns. So these are three most common integration patterns that you would see,
Mhm. Right.
right? So moving forward, so in Salesforce Marketing Cloud, there are two types of API frameworks or architectures supported. So there are certainly more available over the internet, but Salesforce Marketing Cloud supports two of them. And so the first one is RESTful API. So you would have most commonly heard about REST API. So it is an architecture which has some certain set of rules and protocols that uh, which allows you to communicate between two servers over the internet, right? And these protocols are basically so for example, the example that I gave earlier, when you are typing google.com on a browser, and behind the scenes it uses the HTTP protocol, right? Hypertext transfer protocol. So it what it does is uh, goes to the server of the Google and fetches some information and displays a visual to you, nothing but a search bar, right? So that is a, form of communication, and this works through the HTTP protocol. So REST API follows the HTTP protocol. So the REST stands for representational state transfer. So why do we call it representational state transfer? And transfer for basically transferring the data, and state because it has some state, and representation is going to be resource based. So for example, you have different types of APIs available, and every API will have a different representation that we will see in a bit. So if you're getting confused how or what it means, it will be clear in the demo. So right, every API will have a different representation that you will use for so for example, if you want to in Salesforce Marketing Cloud, you want to insert data into a data extension, it will have different representation. If you want to retrieve data from a data extension, its representation will be a little different, right? And you will be performing all these API calls over the HTTP protocol, and there are some certain methods that we will be using over the HTTP protocol. These are called get or post or patch, and put or delete are also the HTTP protocols. And the good thing about REST API is it uses a JSON format. So JSON is JavaScript object notation. It is very commonly accepted format for communications over the internet, which is basically very easy to understand, and it is very lightweight, and that is why REST uses JSON format. So if you will be interested in learning more about the REST API framework, you will find it has some properties like statelessness, it is uniform, it is independent, it is flexible, and it is resource based. So you can add it to your task list and kind of research more about it. But we will be mainly talking about the APIs implementation in Marketing Cloud. Otherwise, the uh, session will be very much elongated. But when we talk about statelessness, so there is going to be some state of the API which is holds the information, and it needs to be complete information, right? So the whole information resides inside the API, and the structure or the process is going to be uniform. And the good thing about REST API is that it is going to be independent. It doesn't need a particular server, or you don't need a particular server to have certain library or an application installed before you can interact with that server using the REST API. And it is going to be resource based. So there are different APIs for different resources, and that also we will see in a bit. As you can see in the image depicted on the slide, so the client initiates a request through some protocol, and it supports JSON format, but it also supports other formats such as XML or HTML. and then the server receives the request and accordingly sends a response back, and the whole communication is flexible. And the other type of API that is supported by Marketing Cloud is called SOAP API. So SOAP API is basically simple object access protocol. It is an API framework that was, you can say, launched in early 90s when the internet came into being, into existence. So initially, the SOAP API framework was used to communicate between two different websites or two different servers. It is still most commonly used, but it is considerably more complicated and difficult for developers to implement. So it is very much similar to REST API. It is a framework. It has some set of rules. It has some protocols. But the thing is, it is not flexible as compared to REST API. With the growing needs of the internet or the people, they want the services to be more flexible and easy to implement, so that we get the most output with the less input, or you can say get the make the most out of anything. But when we talk about SOAP API, it has a very well it is a very well structured and well controlled API framework. What this means is, remember I talked about the contract initially. So to differentiate between a SOAP API and a REST API, so let's say there is a contract between two servers and they are using REST API, but it is very flexible. You can transfer and share the information between two servers very easily, right? But when you have a SOAP API, the contract is going to be very complicated, and everything determined in the contract is going to be mandatory, right? So if there is an so for example, there is a particular structure of API that you have predefined and you want to make some changes in it, you actually cannot. There will be some restrictions, right? For that, you will have to sign a new contract once again, uh, between both of the servers, that yeah, we are going to make this change in this API and it is going to be accepted by you. And once this is approved, then only you will be able to communicate. So the SOAP API is comparatively more complicated, but in a scenarios where security is more important, you will probably find that SOAP API is mostly preferred by the organizations. And why is that? As I mentioned, it has a predefined data format which cannot change over the course of the communication. It uses XML schema based documents, which are also called web service description language. So that is another terminology, right? So, but Marketing Cloud supports both of these types, and it depends which one you are going to use on your use case. So, to share an example, how REST and SOAP API are different, uh, as depicted on in the image as well. So, for example, you are sending a letter to someone, and or an envelope or a postcard. So, when you send an envelope or you receive an envelope from a bank to your home, and that envelope is, you know, it requires you to open the seal, or it is more secure in a way, and it requires you to do some more work at both ends. So the bank has to seal the envelope and client has to open the envelope. But when you are sending a postcard, or uh, let's say a newspaper, it doesn't require anything, right? So you just simply drop the newspaper wherever you want. So that is basically going to be some difference for SOAP API and REST API. Okay, so let's do a demo now for Marketing Cloud APIs. So before I move forward, let's see if we have any questions. Okay, so there is a little noise at my back.
Yeah, so that, yeah, we were having difficulty hearing you a bit.
Oh, I think these are the kids outside.
No worries. Jefferson had a question. Jefferson?
Yeah,
Yep.
please. um, I have a question regarding when do how um, can we choose a SOAP API or REST API when we are working with Salesforce Marketing Cloud?
Yeah, so this is a good question, and that I'm going to show you just right now. Why would you use REST APIs and why would you use SOAP APIs during the demo? So, just to
Okay.
answer your questions, there are some certain areas in Marketing Cloud that are not available in REST API, and for that, you will be using SOAP API. Okay,
Oh, great, great.
so let me share my browser with you all. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen now.
Yeah, we
So
can.
I'm Yeah, so I'm on the Google search engine. I have simply written SFMC APIs, and what I have in my front is the API guide for Marketing Cloud, right? So these are three links that you will most commonly see. The first one will be Marketing Cloud API guide, and then you will see the Postman API suite for Marketing Cloud, and the other one is going to be Marketing Cloud engagement APIs and programmatic languages. So what you can do is basically click on anyone, but it will land you to this page. So when you are on Get Started page, what you will see is some description of the packages and APIs. So when we talk about implementing APIs in Marketing Cloud, it starts with a package. So if you have worked in Salesforce, what you do to integrate a third-party application with Salesforce, you typically build a connected application, right? The same steps are going to be performed in Marketing Cloud also, but the connected app will reside inside a package. So you will create a package, and that package will hold a connected application, and that connected application will have the API keys, right? The secret key and the public key for you to communicate. And when you will be using APIs, so it offers REST and SOAP APIs, to some authentication protocol. So these are the reasons you will probably be using REST API, Marketing Cloud APIs for. But when we talk about tracking, tracking is not supported in REST API. So this is where you will be using the SOAP API. And when you want to make some changes to the account, your Marketing Cloud account, and for that you will be using SOAP API. But by the time Salesforce Marketing Cloud is shifting to REST API from SOAP API for simplicity, and hopefully all of these things will be available in REST API also. But there are certain limitations at this moment related to the platform configuration, and this is something that is very rarely used. But yes, the organization do use SOAP API for those actions. Otherwise, you will 80% to 90% of the time you will be using the REST API in the Marketing Cloud. So the common example, as I shared earlier, can be to insert or retrieve the data from data extension, or to trigger a journey, or to trigger an automation inside Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And once again, if you are not familiar with these terminologies, you will have to watch our sessions how what journeys are, automations are in Marketing Cloud.
Yeah, Jefferson, and to answer your question, we've also added the links of previous sessions on the chat where you asked. So you can also refer to previous sessions over there as well.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, so now when we head to the APIs section, then I can see that there is REST API and then there is SOAP Web Service API. But before this, there is a very important thing called tenant specific API endpoints and API integration security. So yes, if you are reading this documentation, I would highly recommend to read the security page very first, because this is something that will help you determine which API to use and why, and what kind of authentication protocol are you going to use. And then Salesforce Marketing Cloud is a tenant specific. It has it follows multi-tenant architecture, like Salesforce CRM also. And in Salesforce, we have a custom domain that is specific to your Salesforce org. That is true to Marketing Cloud also. So when you have a Marketing Cloud account and you set up a package, you get a particular endpoint that is specific to your instance only. So for example, in this example, we're talking about Northern Trail Outfitters. So they will be using this subdomain, but we will be using a different subdomain for our use case. So this is how the API endpoint looks like. So for example, this is going to be some subdomain .rest and marketingcloudapis.com for REST APIs, and for SOAP, the rest will be replaced by SOAP. Okay, so um, let's see the REST APIs now. Okay, so there is the REST API documentation, and in the documentation you can see what is supported through the API in Marketing Cloud. So you can interact with Automation Studio, Content Builder, or Journey Builder, or Mobile Connect API. Even you can use the API to trigger email sends or automation. That is in Marketing Cloud, what we use is FTP transfer, file transfer. You can use REST API for that also, and also for bulk data ingestion. And there are many more use cases. But just to understand how APIs work, we will be starting with a very simple scenario. So you will be going to the reference guide of the Salesforce Marketing Cloud to see the available API endpoints in Marketing Cloud, right? So, for example, this is an just to show you. If I get to the address API of Marketing Cloud, so this is how it is going to look. So what it does is it validates email from your marketing instance. So that you want to verify whether the email is correct or not, and that email exists inside your Marketing Cloud. So you can use the validate email endpoint to verify before sending the email to the uh, email address, right? And how would it look like? It would look like something like this. So Marketing Cloud has the complete documentation for every API, right? And remember, we were talking about the representation and resource page. And so, yeah, so this is how you represent the REST API. This is a curl form, and there are going to be different forms available. So for example, if I change it to HTTP, this is how it will look like. So, right, so APIs has different representation. By representation, I mean it is going to have different data that you will need to interact with the server, and every API is resource based. So right, so you have the same endpoint, you see, but you have different resources. You want to get validate the email, so you are going to use the address resource for this API. And then there is also going to be version. For example, if you want to get the data from a data extension, you will use a different API endpoint. The URL will be the same, but the resource endpoint will change. Right? For example, this is get data extensions. You can get all the data extensions inside your Marketing Cloud. And similarly, there are going to be APIs that will help you get data from a data extension inside the Marketing Cloud. So in this example, I'm going to use Postman. What you can do is click on this link and it will open Postman for you. So if you do not have a Postman account already, you can create one. But when you access the Postman, and this is how it will look like, right? This is the Salesforce API suite, and it also has Salesforce Marketing Cloud APIs inside it. So this is how initially it will look like. It has the REST API collection as well as the SOAP API collection. And as we mentioned, that REST API uses JSON format while SOAP API uses XML format. You will find both of these here. And before we start the communication, what we mentioned is we need an package and a connected application. Okay, so let me log into the Marketing Cloud instance. Mm, okay, looks like it is expired. Okay, so now I'm logged into the Salesforce Marketing Cloud instance that we have been seeing in previous demos as well. So when you are in your Salesforce Marketing Cloud instance, what you have to do is first of all create a package and then create a connected app. What I will do is go to the setup, and then head to the apps, and then you can find installed packages, right? When you go to the installed packages, you will find an option to create a new package by yourself also, right? So here you can see I can create a new package from here. It is very simple to create. You just input the name and description, and that is it. So once you have created the package, it will appear here in the list. So I've already created one with the name of API integration. So once you create the package, you will get all these previous pre-populated for you. So it will have the package ID, the signing secret, and the client ID and client secret as well. So that is what we will be using to integrate or to connect this Marketing Cloud instance with any other system. So you can see I have the client ID as well as the active secret, which is hidden, and then there is a state secret. So I can generate a new secret for this session, right? So I can copy this client secret ID. So now we have created a package. We also, okay, so I think I missed about adding the component into the package. Yeah, so you can see there's a button called add component inside the package. So what you will do here is you will be choosing the component that you would need. Since I have already added API integration component in this package, it is grayed out, but you will choose the API integration component when you are you need the API keys to connect or integrate your Salesforce Marketing Cloud instance with any other application. And once you have the API integration component, this is how it looks like. It has client ID and client secret, and it also has the API endpoints for you. So before we initiate communication, as I mentioned, we need to, handshake or establish the authentication or authorization first. So for authorization, this is going to be the endpoint. So the only difference is auth, right, in between instead of rest. And this is the subdomain for our org. So MCF 5 and go and up till 6i8. So this will be unique to our Salesforce Marketing Cloud instance. So once again, let's go back to the Postman. So when you are in your Salesforce Marketing Cloud API suite, you can add this information into the variables. So for example, it has pre-configured APIs available. So I can simply add the subdomain, the client ID, the client secret, as well as the MID. So that is the Salesforce Marketing Cloud account ID to be used across the APIs, right? So, but just to show you, to start from the very beginning, you create a new API and you copy the URL, the auth URL from the API integration connected app. You paste it here and select the post protocol, and then it has a certain format. So if I can show you the auth API, okay, where am I? Yep, here it is. So we'll always start with authentication first, and it will have the API. What you would need is to establish a connection, and to establish that connection, you need an access token. To get the access token, you will use this endpoint and appended by this resource, right? v2 slash token. And this is going to be the representation state for this API. So it requires some certain parameters to be passed over the API for it to return an access token or to grant access for you to engage with the Marketing Cloud instance, right? So we will be setting the grant type to the client credentials. So there are different types of grant. In this example, we are using client credentials because we have client ID and client secret. And sometimes you would have seen different type of grant returns and returns a token, but through a web login. So when you click some button, you have to authorize by logging into the account, and then it returns the permission for you to do something. For example, Google sign on. Whenever you are on a new website or something, you can create an account using Google. So we have to pass the grant type and the client ID, client secret, and account ID. So that is what I have done here, right? So we have the API endpoint. I have passed these parameters inside the body, and now if I click send, let's see what happens. Okay, now you see it has given returned an error, and why it has returned an error? Because of the uh, client secret that we just deleted previously. Let me. Okay, so I think I have missed this now. So basically, what I need is a client secret from here. So did I copy it early? I guess so. So yeah, now I have the client secret. So when I have the client secret, I can see in the response that it has generated an access token. So once again, if I go back to the documentation, so this was the post URL. So this is the request body that we need to pass. So this is the information that the server needs in order to return an access token, right? And what it does, it returns the response in this format. So this is the representation for the input and output for this particular API. So it has the access token, and it also has the REST and SOAP instance URL, so that we can use it for any other purpose. So once we have the access token, we will need this access token to initiate any further communication with the Salesforce Marketing Cloud API. So for example, if I just go back to the documentation, and if I want to use the data extensions API, so we have different endpoints here to get the data from the data extension inside the Marketing Cloud. So you can use this endpoint, for example, right? So what it has the resource, it has data version 1 custom object data, and it requires the data extension ID, and that we can provide to the endpoint. So I have also probably set this up here. Yep. So we have this API, and we will be using the access token that we just generated to authorize, right? I'm copying this access token from here and passing it inside the header as authorization bearer token. Okay, so I have set the access token, and then I can then what I need here is the data extension ID. So if I just go back to the instance, I can go to the contact builder, and inside data extensions, I need to look for a particular data extension and look for the data extension ID. And why I'm showing you this is sometimes it is difficult for you to find the data extension ID. So Marketing Cloud data extension has data extension name, it has some external key, it also has an ID, and there is no easy way to get the data extension ID other than this. So when I hover over this data extension, it's called events with members, right? You can see a black strip appearing at the bottom here. So when I hover over it, you can see it has a data extension after data extension slash some ID. That is what we need, and for that we can use the inspect element of the browser to get the data ID. So you will be using some technicalities here to get the data extension ID from your Marketing Cloud instance. So it is available inside data object ID, and then you can pass this ID inside the API URL, right? And when I send the request now, it returns some data. So what it has a particular format, and I can see it has returned some data from the data extension, right? It has the subscriber key of the particular record, and it has some values. So let me show you this data inside this data extension. So it says it has currently one record, right? So this is a data extension that we created in our previous demo. So it has one record with all these properties and some data, so email, first name, last name, and so on. And this has returned the whole data for me. So for example, if it had not one but 100 rows, so it would have returned 100 rows of data to me, because we are using the API to get the complete data um, from the data extension. But you can see it also has the page size 2500. So in the first iteration it will return 2500 records. So you can use these parameters inside the URL, right? Number of page, the page size, and the fields that you want. If you want to limit the data that it returns in the response, so you can use all these parameters inside your URL. And this is the response that we just received. And the response and the request parameters that we pass in the body and that we receive in the response body are going to be different for every API endpoint. So this was the API to get the data. And then there is another API for the very same purpose, but the difference here is, instead of using the data extension ID, which you will very rarely be using, what you can do is use the data extension key, right? So for example, if I change this endpoint, and it's asking for the data extension key, and that is what you will find in most of the integrations for Marketing Cloud. So it has this XML key, right? So I can copy this key from here and replace it here. So it will bring the very same data, but this time what we have used here is the data extension key instead of the data extension ID. So most of the times you will be using the data extension key. And this is one integration. And then you can do, for example, I have configured this API here, which is very similar. I'm using the data extension key, but the endpoint is a little different. So it says version 1 data events and rows, and I'm also passing the subscriber ID uh, for this API endpoint. So what it does is, as you can see by the name, it upserts the row inside the data extension. So basically, we are adding a new record into the data extension. So I have passed these values. These are the same values that we received previously. I have just changed some data here. So email, first name, last name, keeping the whole information the same. So, and for the subscriber key that we received here, right? We have key and then we have values, because every subscriber is going to be unique and it needs some identity. So in this API, we pass the key as the parameter to the URL, and then the values that we need to be inserted. So you can insert multiple rows using this API, but we are adding a single at this moment. So I'm going to use the put protocol for this call and then hit send. Let's see if it works. Okay, so the token is expired, so I need to update the token first. Let me just copy it from here. Hmm, right. So now we have the data, we have the response. So it says that the data has been upserted. Let's see if it worked. Okay. Yeah, previously we had a single record and now we have two records. So the data has been upserted into this data extension. So that is how Salesforce Marketing Cloud REST APIs work. So, and in real world scenario, you will not be using the Postman. So this is an application that you can use for API testing and implementation at first. But what happens in real world scenario, you would be using some code and implement these endpoints and the parameters or the JSON using some programming language. For example, it can be JavaScript, it can be Python or PHP. So for those who were available in our previous session, we had created a dynamic web page. So if you remember, so I'm going to the cloud pages inside Marketing Cloud. Previously, we created an event registration page that was dynamically accessed from the email. But this time, I'm going to open the same page here. So this is a web page inside the Marketing Cloud, and it has this URL. So let me just quickly open this page. Okay, so this is how it looks. So it has a pre-populated event name. So this is an event registration form. So what I want to do is, let's say, register for this event, and I'll provide some information here. And when I hit register now button, nice, it has returned some error. So let's resolve this error. So why did it return an error? Because we need to update the client secret. That's not the valid one. So I'll talk about this code in a bit, but just to show you the difference. Okay, now it says thank you for registering. So you will mostly be using APIs in a similar scenario where you will be integrating your website or some other application with your marketing cloud instance. So what it does is it does the very same thing that we just saw in the Postman. It creates a record inside the data extension. Okay. So meanwhile, the data extension is loading. So you can see in this code, what I have done, this is basically server-side JavaScript. I have done set up some variables, client ID, client secret, account ID, the very same parameters that we use inside the Postman. And then I'm passing the data extension key here. And then I'm using HTTP post method from the platform library for Marketing Cloud inside server-side JavaScript. So I'm passing in the endpoint, and I'm passing in the data, and it has along with the endpoint, it has what we call is access token passing. So basically, this URL is to retrieve the access token first, right? When we get the access token, then we make another call to the endpoint that we just saw in the Postman, that is data events endpoint, and then I'm passing in the payload in this format, and it has these values. So what it does is creates a new record inside this data extension. So this is how you will be using APIs inside your code. So basically, in this example, I'm using server-side JavaScript, and it has a particular pattern. So it uses HTTP post method. You give the URL, the content type, and then you pass the JSON inside the body as well as the header values. So we have the authorization token inside the header. But first, what we did is we authenticated with the server using using the client ID and client secret. So it returned access token, and when this was validated, then we were able to perform some operations over in our Salesforce and Marketing Cloud instance. Okay, so that's how Salesforce Marketing Cloud APIs work. And now I can see we have 3 records, and the other record was just inserted uh, over the fly using the API. And that's a demonstration for Salesforce Marketing Cloud APIs. Let me know if you have any questions, and then we can wrap up this session.
Does anyone have any questions? There are no more in the chat. Yeah, Jefferson.
Yeah, thank you. That was very enlightening session to me. I appreciate too much. You make this simple. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
one. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. I'm a developer, but not in the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I'm a core developer. I'm trying to learn Marketing Cloud, and yeah, that was a great session.
Yeah, so I can
You
understand it as
mentioned,
being a bit more technical, but the thing is, this is the sixth session of our series. So, if it is a little bit overwhelming, that is totally understandable. But I have tried to make things simple and easy as much as possible. But yeah, I can understand it was a little more technical.
no,
But
no,
it's
that was
okay,
great.
Jefferson. If you
Can
have
I
any
ask
more,
a question?
yeah, if there's
Yeah.
any difficulty, we can also revisit previous sessions as well. And the group that you have joined on WhatsApp, it
Mhm.
has Asad in it and the previous speaker Asfar as well in the group. We have me and Rimsha over there. Those are the group leaders who have arranged this. So any one of us can help you with any of the queries that you have in the future as well. So don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. A single question is about the cloud page. I saw because it is just a simple presentation, but I saw that we used in there the credentials in the cloud page. Um, do you remember if we have an option where we can store the credentials in a secret place in the Marketing Cloud?
Asad, I think Asad has dropped from the meeting. There will be some issue.
Okay. Hmm.
No worries. We'll wait for him to reconnect and then we can have this question again. Sorry about that.
Hmm. No, no, no worries, no worries. I will put in the chat and I can drop this question in the group as well. That would be,
Yes, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah,
Asad is
he's back.
here. Welcome.
Mhm.
Welcome back, Asad.
Right.
No worries.
Yeah, so
Asad, so
this is a very good
Jefferson had a
question. I was expecting this question from someone. Otherwise, I had the answer ready. So
Mhm.
there's a question from Jefferson that says, where can we securely store the credentials in Marketing Cloud so they can be used in a cloud page without exporting those credentials? So this is a very good question, Jefferson. So when you are working in Marketing Cloud, there are no environment variables where you can store the client ID and client secret. But there is an alternative that is called encryption, right? So when you are working with client ID and client secret, you what you will do is first encrypt those keys using the symmetric encryption which is available inside Marketing Cloud, and then you can use the encrypted client ID and client secret inside the code instead of the actual client ID and client secret. So when you use those encrypted client IDs and client secrets, that means if your data is exposed to someone or something, those client IDs and client secret will not work for them unless they are decrypted, right? So that is how you protect the client ID and secret.
Great, great. Thank you.
So for the that encryption and decryption mechanism resides inside Salesforce Marketing Cloud. That is particular to Salesforce Marketing Cloud, but even when you are using the APIs somewhere else, that would have something different to store the API keys. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That is perfect, Asad. Then thank you so much for this valuable session. Thank you for so much for creating this presentation, taking time from your such busy schedule. And thank you so much for this well explained session. So if anyone else have any more questions, do let us know on the group or on the WhatsApp group or maybe on the chat to ping me or Remsha or us directly. So we would be very happy to help you guys.
Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Hope this has been a useful session. Uh,
Absolutely.
Other than that being very technical, but yeah.
No, no, it was very helpful. And thank you so much, Asad. Thank you, Jefferson, for joining, and thank you everyone for joining. Take
Thank you,
care,
everyone.
guys.
See you in the next session. See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, bye bye. Thank you.
Never mind. Take care.